Right, so people who've heard me speak before says it's a bit like when you hire one of those little motorboats at the seaside and you set off, and for the first 20 minutes you don't seem to be able to steer it, doesn't seem to go anywhere. And finally, when you get control of it, you realise you are actually 5 minutes left on your hire and 20 minutes away from the shore. So as this goes through and you begin to think, what's he talking about? Don't worry, in the final minute it'll begin to make some sense, possibly. Right. This is me on the right at the age of roughly 4 or 5. The thing in the middle is a Christmas tree. This was going to be the future of Christmas trees, apparently. They were made by a company that worked out that their brooms, if you stuck them together, would make a false Christmas tree. They were going to take over the world, as your faces suggest. They never did. On the left-hand side is my brother. He's 10 years older than me, one of the most beautiful human beings you will have the pleasure to meet. Which puts me in the position of being the disappointment of the family. When we were 6, or when I was 6 rather, there were other people being 6, but in relation to this, when I was 6, my family decided to move from Oldham, just outside of Manchester, down to Kingston. I didn't get a big vote in this, but I was told it was going to be brilliant. First experience of my family lying to me. When I went to my new primary school, it was awful, and I'll tell you for why it was awful. 2 things. First off, I noticed my voice didn't sit with anybody else's in the playground. In fact, people kept coming up and saying, "Say that again, it sounds funny." So I spent the first few days merely repeating things while people laughed at me. The other thing that happened on the first day, I'd taken in a Dalek. Because in Oldham, you worked in the morning, and in the afternoon, you were allowed to play. I was 6. In the afternoon at school, I lifted up my Dalek onto the desk, and the teacher said, and at this point I normally say Hutchinson, but it's primary school, so I imagine they used Robin. It was probably more polite. "What are you doing, Robin?" So I said, "I'm playing." To which she went, "Why?" And I said, "Because we play in the afternoon." And she said, "Not here, we don't." And I had to put the Dalek off, and the punishment of work continued. And inside of me, a little part died. Because actually, play is the great place of discovery. And one of the themes that will come through this for me is how we reinvent, reimagine play for adults. Let me move my life on a bit. I regard myself as a very lucky man. I'm lucky because I've never really had much control over my life. Wonderful things seem to happen. I get great opportunities. I'm surrounded by brilliant friends. I have a loving family and a wonderful wife. I'm lucky. I've worked in large organisations. Whenever you say lucky, there's always some macho guy who goes, "You make your own luck in this world." You don't. I didn't choose to be born in the UK. That was luck that gave me such a head start. You can make fortune, but you have to realise the minute you talk as luck as something that you've made and others somehow have got it wrong is the start of the separation between perceived success and failure, and it's a very difficult thing. So I'm lucky. I'm a manic depressive. In the year 2000, it was identified I'm a manic depressive. Actually, I'm no longer a manic depressive. I'm bipolar. I was rebranded. I personally preferred manic depressive. I don't know, it just sounds more like, you know, bipolar. Anyway, so this has kind of influenced, I believe, a lot of the way that I live my life. I've been in depression now for about 6 months. In the last 5 weeks, I've started having anxiety attacks. I can't tell you how good it's been, this event for me, and sitting waiting over there. Perfect, absolutely perfect. So, let me tell you a little bit about Surbiton, where I live. Surbiton is a fascinating place. If you say to most people, "Hey, what do you like about Surbiton?" they will say, "Oh, it's brilliant. 20 minutes to London, 20 minutes to the countryside." And one day, about 6 years ago, it struck me, fancy living in a place where you describe it through the speed you can leave it. I mean, what an astonishing psyche that is. What's great about where you live? Oh, you can get away from it really quickly. It actually started to beg a question about the sort of place it was. It's a dormitory place, by and large, like a lot of the suburbs. It's a place where people sleep, they shop, they work in London potentially. If they're going to have a good time, they're going to stay in London. And you end up with people who ghost walk through their lives where they live, and all the animation happens elsewhere. We are the shorthand for suburbia. Surbiton is a classic expression. We've been helped in marketing terms by things like The Good Life, which have said there are more Margaux and Jerrys in Surbiton than there are Tom and Barbaras. My experience is actually we're populated by Tom and Barbaras, and the perception of Surbiton is entirely wrong. And actually, the suburbs are no longer what they used to be. They are full of dynamic, brilliant people who, generally speaking, are time poor. And the old-fashioned route of involvement and engagement, Rotary Round Table, political party, actually has fallen by the wayside because very few people are now prepared to commit themselves to that regularity, nor do you see people rushing up the street going, "Can I be the treasurer?" So what is the new form of engagement and volunteering? We were looking at a place where a lot of people described it as soulless, that they didn't know how to fit. They were passing through it, ghosts in their lives. And we did the one thing I suspect everybody would do at that point. We created the legend of a little goat boy. It's the classic response in these situations, isn't it? I'll tell you a little bit about the legend of Lefi. Lefi arrives in a place called Mount Seething. We use Seething rather than Surbiton because I was extraordinarily nervous at the start of all of this that if we used the term Surbiton, we would find hostility from some quarters. How dare you come here giving us all this about Surbiton when we love it so much? So Seething was this kind of fantasy place. Weirdly enough, it's actually real. It's geographically there, but it had just fallen out of the local parlance. So in Seething, you have a village that is terrorised by a giant that lives at the top of Mount Seething called Thomas Deaton. But like all giants, he's only there once every 4 years. I don't need to tell you that. You're all experts in giant transitory movement, so you're all going, why are you wasting your time on that, Robin? We understand the basics of giants. And when the giant goes away, one time, a little baby goat boy is found at the bottom of this mountain. Now, because he is different, the adults who've grown up in fear want to forget that it's there. But the children who don't have that fear tend and care for the little goat boy. And the little goat boy grows at a rate a goat boy will grow. So within 3 years and the giant's coming back, it's a reasonable sized goat boy as goat boys go. Don't use the dating app. When the giant comes back, Lefi effectively tricks him. The giant has to honour his word and leave, but in doing so smashes down the mountain, and in doing that, Lefi disappears. And we published a little book, which, if you don't mind, I'll just read a tiny extract from while shaking badly. So if it actually looks like I'm fanning myself at this point. So you got it? Picture the scene. The villagers are all standing round. They've realised that Lefi has gone. But not only did they realise Lefi has gone, they realised, the adults, that they'd treated him terribly. They'd rejected him. They'd spurned him. And despite all of that, he had helped them. And so this is the little caption bit. The leader of the village spoke. "Villagers of Seething," she said, "we must learn from today and never behave again like this. Seething must become a village that is open to all. It shouldn't matter what you look like, where you come from, or who you are. You'll be welcome here, and Lefi has shown us the way." And that's sort of the underpinning principle of the state of Seething. A non-geographical space in which everybody is welcome if they come with their hearts believing the world can be beautiful if we give the space to make it beautiful. And if we support other people, they can realise their ambitions, and if they fall, we're there to pick them up and not to ridicule them. So on, I think it was 2009, we decided, in honour of the book and where it's mentioned, we'd have a procession in honour of the little goat boy. In my head, this procession was going to be absolutely wonderful. It was due to set off at 3 o'clock. We'd invited people to wear fancy dress, do whatever they want, and we were going to parade around the streets, and people would stop in awe and go, "Goodness, is this what happening now?" That's a sentence, but in the wrong order. So, at 2:45, 5 of us. At about 2:50, 7. And I'm beginning to think, I may be the only person who thinks this is worth doing. And at 3 o'clock, suddenly, we had between 250 and 300 people who turned up and walked round the streets. And when people were stopping and saying, what's this about? They were going, it's about the goat boy. It's about taking this land back. And the police, in fairness, were even better than that. The police were going, I have no bloody idea, but it's fun. So, why do we process? What's it about? It's actually about story. It's about giving people their space back. Space and place, it's really interesting, the concept. Architects talk of spaces. Places are the bits people inhabit. It's when it changes. We realised part of our issue was nobody had a narrative for Surbiton. You either got the suburban or you got the good life. How do you counter that? By actually saying, no, it's full of dynamism, it's full of fun, it's full of spirit. Well, you create absurdity. The other thing absurdity does is it draws out creatives. If you look at the regeneration, certainly of Europe in particular, what you get is very run-down areas, the rent is cheap, the artists go there because quite honestly that's the only place they can afford. They start their activity, it creates a buzz, the bars start to fill, we are energy vampires. Where's the energy? It's over there. Oh, and then a developer goes, oh look, we could knock all that down and build something spectacular, and the artists, who are now by used to it, go, okay, we'll go and find somewhere else cheap to live for a while, and we'll do it again. Actually, Surbiton is full of creatives, and they want to play. There's a really interesting, it was playing upstairs, Sir Ken Robinson with his talk on creativity. His great sentence, we educate creativity out of children. It is our belief we then de-skill adults at work. That actually the real danger of our life is not that we haven't got the resource, we don't have the talent, it's the fact we manage it out of people and they become grey and they become dull. What these things do is twofold. It makes people smile and laugh, and it makes people think anything might be possible. We take the boundaries away and we witness change. We see people's patterns changing. They begin to make decisions. I don't know what the next slide... just people making food. But how lovely, coming together to share food, making a celebration together. Why is this important? Because actually, without these stories, we've got nothing to say. I don't like when people come together and talk about programmes they've seen. That's very passive to me. I like the animation of people explaining the absurdity of something they've been engaged with. A few years ago, and I won't go into too much detail, we were covered in the Evening Standard and they put something like, if you want to go and see real community, go down to Seething and experience. It was very kind. We got an email from somebody saying, I'd like to join your club. And I think the person said, and I'm 55 years old or whatever it was. And I turned to my wife and I went, dear goodness, look, it says it's a club, and look at the age. And my wife said, did you actually read the article? I said, no, I'm quite shallow like that headline, and that's about it for me. She said, well, they describe it as a club. Okay, I'll forgive her that, but think of the age. It's your age. I went, yep, okay, that's great. Anyway, so this person then turns up and gets involved. Now, the business of brilliance and the danger of talks like TEDs is actually, you've got people who've gone right up there, and the world seems very unachievable for most of us. Actually, being brilliant is only being the best you can be. And this person came along actually with an ambition to put on a yellow Marshall's jacket and walk alongside what we did. That was it. What was interesting a few months later, after this person had got more and more engaged, some people came from work. She invited these people down. And one of them came up to me afterwards and said, you've no idea what you've done. And I normally take that as a threat, to be honest with you. That's normally when somebody clouts me. But on this occasion, just said that up till very recently, on a Monday, all this person could talk about at work was the difficulty of the weekend. And now they came in enthused and passionate with stories that said, actually, we've got importance. Now, the issue hadn't gone away, but the balance had been struck. There was something there. Gosh, is that the time? Right. These are some waterworks. I thought you'd be interested. Guinea pigs. Lovely. Let's go guinea pigs. So, we recently won the Britain Has Spirit Award. It came with it with a £25,000 cheque for our work, which is just unbelievable. The reason that is not to go woohoo. It was actually thousands upon thousands of people voted, and they all then said, when they came up, we won, didn't we? We've won, haven't we? And that's the greatest shift. From you over there, I, to we. The world is full of people who tell you what you should do. Do you know what you should do? You should, no, hold on a moment. What should we do? We now get people coming up to us and saying, do you know what I've always wanted to do? And you generally have to go, no. And then they'll say this, and you go, well, you should do it. And they go, oh, thank you. And there is something weird about our lives, and we now call it permission to be brilliant. Actually, people need that support to take the first step. You'll get this, but basically what this says is people who participate get happier, that they feel they've got more influence on their lives, they feel that they can influence where they live. The correspondent for this is actually those people who filled in our survey. We do an annual survey, who don't participate, higher fear of crime, higher sense that actually they can't influence anything. It really is. Here are some comments. Imagine I'd time this better. The reason this one's up is because people go, you're really lucky there where you live, because all these people want to do it. This is us down in Swanage in Dorset, where we actually said, wouldn't it be great if there was a fish festival here, and just said, does anybody fancy organising a fish festival? And as their business said, we've never had so many businesses in one room. This was last year's fish festival, absolutely going strong, brilliant. It's not about where you live, it's about the attitude to where you live. We recently opened the Museum of Futures. This is a place where people can curate their lives. We've created a space where people can come in and realise their imagination, their dreams, their ambitions. It's being used extensively already. It's your playground. We've opened a community kitchen in there so that people can scale their businesses. Nesta, recent report this week. People helping people. Why on earth we have to go and commission loads of reports to tell us that actually the world is a better place when we stay together? This is the final bit, you'll be pleased to hear. Relieved, actually, probably. Thomas Deaton, the giant. I told this story at one of our events, and a kid of about this age just came up and said to me, why are giants always bad? And it really rocked me back, actually. Because we try desperately, I hope, to live without prejudice, to live without fear, and yet it's implicit within us that there are certain ogres, certain ghosts, certain things. And as a result of that, we've written the story before Lefi now that actually explains that his anger, his hate, his destruction was based around a simple word, fear. And actually, if there's one thread that's gone through the whole of this, it's how we dispense with fear. Because this little circle here that we stand on is our lives. Shirley Valentine, why do we lead such little lives? And actually, all you have to do is that, and the world changes a little bit. You've broadened the circle in which you operate. We educate creativity out of children, we de-skill adults at work. I want to create playgrounds where an adult can imagine putting their coat on their head and running fast and believing they could fly. Because the reality is, with the right people around you, you can. You can do all those things that you wanted to do, and it might be creating a new empire. It might be wearing a yellow fluorescent jacket. It doesn't matter. Just be the best you can be, and we'll all have a much better world. Thank you.